Yeah, I really should sort out my includes. I don't like includes with includes. Whatever. Do. I'd work long hours for myself or on my own products. I put 12 hours days at PopCap when I was making my own game and having an absolute blast. I'll never work that hard for someone other than myself. Don't forget about the viewbots, yeah. Do you code your own viewbots using C++? All the time, yes. Do you think from experience it's possible to come back from being tired all the time and literally your body failing? Yes, did you? Well, there was one point. So I've had. It's not a breakdown, but I did have one moment in my. Well, I've had. So there's been a couple of times where I've been, in fact, probably about 3 in my career where work has been so stressful that I've had major health problems as opposed to minor health problems. I mean, like. There's a funny one, like, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a bald patch. And a couple of years ago, I was so stressed at work, having arguments with people that were just calling me liars and not believing me anything. It's like unbelievable. That I actually started having, my hair fell out on my beard. I've never seen that. I had to go looking up going, what the hell? And it's not fully recovered, so patchy beard boy. And I've got psoriasis as well, which has cropped up since my first days. But the worst thing I had was when I just left a company that was closing down, and it was really stressful. They were trying to get me to basically get my team to work overtime. So what they did was we knew what was going to happen. They wanted to shut our studio down, but they wanted us to complete our project first. So you can imagine that morale was at 0. Knowing that they wanted this project out, and then they were going to sack everyone. And so they brought down this, they'd sacked all the other stuff. It was just our team in an empty office, basically. And they brought down this producer from one of the remaining things. And his job, and we worked this out, it was pretty obvious, his job was to wring every last drop of blood out of us before going back to his safe job. And so he was pretty much a sort of hatchet man, and he was every day he was trying to tell me, you know, this project needs to get done at this day, and I'm saying, well, look, we've got our projections, this is what people are doing, we think we'll hit this then. And then it's like you get the stupid questions all the time with people who are pushy, like, when will this bug get done? It's like, well, we don't know, it looks like this, so I would put as a bounds this and this, but it's, you know, we don't know. And it's like, well, it's got to get done. It's got to get done. And I'm like, and I was getting really stressed because I wasn't passing any of this on to the team, but I was getting really grouchy. Anyway, he eventually, he said, look, this game's going to have to get done. And, you know, we've got a deadline in 2 weeks' time, and it needs to get done. You need to call your team in and tell them to work overtime. And I was like, right, well, I don't know if I was this articulate in the meeting. I was probably a dribbling mess. And, I said to him, look, first of all, that deadline isn't the final deadline. You know that, I know that. And once that deadline's passed, there'll be another one and then another one. We know that because we know that they're not ready to publish, etc. or whatever. So it's good to have goals, but to say that that's the final deadline when we've already missed 2 and it's not a problem, you're putting unnecessary stress. Secondly, I'm not going to ask anyone to ever work overtime or tell them to work overtime. I'm not going to pull that line in their contract. So you can say it to them if you want, and I won't contradict you, but you know, in public. But I'm certainly not going to say that to them as their lead because I don't think it's right. It will take as long as it takes, and we're not even that far. It's not like it's a catastrophe. It wasn't. It was entirely normal. And anyway, so he did that. He did exactly that, where he was saying in front of everyone they've got to work late and all that sort of stuff. But of course, the fact that I wasn't saying it meant everyone knew it was pure rubbish and didn't like him anyway. And it got worse and worse. And I left. Anyway, I left. And by the way, I'm not checking my chat. So if I've been boring, sorry, tough. Where am I? And anyway, so now comes the actual point of this, which is I went home and I sort of tried to unwind for about a week or whatever it was, a month, I can't remember. But eventually I was like, oh, I've got to go and do some code, haven't I? Because I was planning on doing some indie stuff then. And it was a really weird thing. You've heard of writer's block, right? Where people can't write. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird. You just write, surely. But I had coder's block. I sat down to the keyboard and there was like this physical thing sitting on my fingers. Just in front of the keyboard. Like I couldn't lift my wrists to put my fingers on the keyboard. I couldn't do it. It was the weirdest thing, and this carried on for quite some time, to the point where I was incredibly worried. Like this lasted several months. I'd go and I'd sit in front of the keyboard, ready to code, and I had ideas and stuff, but I couldn't do it. Even if I, literally put all this effort in to lift my fingers on, put them on the keyboard, I couldn't write a line of code. I just couldn't do it. I could barely load up Visual Studio. And this went on for far too long, to the point where I started to get seriously worried, because the intention was finish that job. I left the stressful job. I don't know where I'm going. Hang on. Finish the stressful job. Unwind because it was stressful, and then go and get another job in games. It's all I've ever done, right? It's all I've ever worked on. And I suddenly thought I may never be able to code again. And that was really worrying, because it's like, well, what do I do? There's nothing else I can do. I've not trained for anything. I was good at it. I was good at coding, and I was okay as a lead. I don't think I've ever been exceptional as a lead. But I was certainly better than some, stroke most, whatever. And what do? That was my life kind of running away. That was pretty miserable time. Pretty miserable time. I still got it easier than everybody else who stayed. So yeah, right. I've got 5. Where's the last one? Oh yeah, there it is, I see it. Yeah, but this wasn't like I've had it where I've been into work before and like my mind's not attuned to problems, or I'm a bit tired. And so for a day you can't really code and you need to find something else. This was something else. This was not good. Not good at all. There we go. We've got all 6, so the cookie should have appeared. And I genuinely hope to never happen. I mean, all that happened was over time, like after several months, I could actually code something little, and it slowly came back. You found all the artifacts, but are you any happier, really? You shouldn't believe in legends at your age still. You beat the tiny game. Hooray! There you go. That's you watching me play my single-player game. Was it Ubisoft? No, it was Climax. And I would quite happily stab some of the producers I've worked with there, if no one was looking. In my experience, working at a job with negative culture adds considerably more change into the burnout jar. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, that's how burnout people can be induced to work long hours. Is either through fear of losing their job, or peer pressure, or naivety, and all of those things are kind of negative in my experience. Right. You have to give yourself time to recover. Give yourself a strict schedule and stick to it. Go home with time. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a very funny, you see companies. Hang on. Let me go and find this. Look at this rubbish. Look at this rubbish. I think it's. I've worked with some good producers, so I definitely appreciate them. I wouldn't say it's 95% of producers are useless. I think there's some. I think a lot of them are good-willing, and a lot of them might be good, but they don't speak the technical language. And whichever way you cut it, programmers are still the biggest, most important part of software development, right? They just are. So having staff that don't speak programmer language is bad. Yeah, well, I don't know. I assume it's serious. Here are some of our rules. Look at that. So they're confusing dedicated and passionate to staying late. Because the thing is, right, these two, to me, these bottom two are contradictory for these, right? Because if you're incredibly dedicated and passionate, then you care about productivity. And if you do not stop learning, then you keep learning. So if you care about productivity and professionalism and you keep learning, you'll eventually find out that these three work against productivity and professionalism. They're idiots. They're arseholes. Genuinely. The thing is, you know, actually, at least they've been open and honest about that. But then that's a bit like saying, at least somebody's told you when they're going to shoot you in the head and when you've got a blindfold on, rather than doing it without notice. It's hard to be kind towards them. Oh, actually, let's do... Oh, that did work.